everyone, and welcome to our knowledge transfer session. Today we're going to talk about diversifying concentrated stock positions. My office here is in Bellevue, Washington State, and one of the challenges I've had is that I have a lot of people who work around me, Starbucks, Microsoft, Meta, Google, Costco, who over time have accumulated a lot of company stock, and they need strategies to get out of them. And I would argue the strategies are fairly well known today, but actually bringing them together in your own financial plan can be challenging. So I think this video will give you a good opportunity to kind of learn about what's out there and kind of figure out where you want to go in this path, basically. Before we get going, my name is John Erickson again. My practice is in Bellevue, Washington, next to Overlake Hospital. I have more than 17 years of financial services experience, everywhere working from a bank, working in 401ks, I worked inside an insurance company, and I, of course, run my own financial planning practice. My roots in Washington State run deep. I went to Washington State University, and I really enjoy creating these videos for people and trying to give knowledge transfer about all these different concepts in the financial services industry. This is our standard disclosure statement. We always bring up that the information today has to be treated as general in nature. We're never sure exactly someone's financial situation. When we give people estimates or models, we can't necessarily guarantee that that will be the result that will occur. So just treat today's information as general in nature, even though I'm trying to give you good and direct information. So concentrated equity positions, we have to understand why and the problems around that. And then we have to understand the concepts of can you do better? What does it take to do better? And then we'll go through some final thoughts about this overall subject. And so really, if we dive into this, one of the biggest problems we have, especially in the region we are in, I have a lot of people who over time have accrued a lot of company stock. And you wouldn't think this is a problem, this is actually a great thing, but every once in a while, they achieve amazing returns. Using Microsoft as an example, over the last 20 years, they've averaged about 17.5% returns. And as part of your compensation package, especially with a lot of tech companies, you oftentimes get restricted stock units or some type of incentive compensation plan that gives you stock. And in this case, if you've gotten $30,000 of restricted stock units over 20 years at this rate of return, you're worth roughly $4 million on just this piece alone after 20 years. And I've had a chance to review a lot of people's retirement plans, and I find that when people get concentrated equity positions, it's represented 50% or more of their entire retirement, which means their retirement is basically dependent upon one company. And this is a really double-edged sword, because if this one company just dominates forever, you can actually achieve generational wealth in retirement. But a lot of people want to diversify, right? They don't want to take the risk on their retirement on one company. And when you diversify, you run into a basic problem. You need to sell the shares, and you're going to have to pay taxes. And when you pay taxes, it can be fairly steep. What happens is when you start to diversify, especially if you diversify heavily, you can push your capital gains up to 20%. You can accrue 3.8% net investment tax, and there's also state taxes. In Washington State, it's around 7%. And so when you go to diversify, that first diversification can be a pretty big hit. In this case, I'm not going to do all the tax law analysis. I'm going to try and keep it simple, but I'm going to assume that on a $2 million sale, your basis is $400,000, meaning you've already paid taxes somehow on $400,000, and you have $1.6 million worth of gains. And when you go through, we're going to use the highest brackets for this example, and you pay your taxes, you would see that on your $2 million sale to diversify, you would end up with about $1.5 million, or you'd lose about 25%. And this is problematic because it's not just the amount of taxes you lose on this, but there's other hits like Medicare IRMA, where, in retirement, based upon your income, you pay extra taxes into Medicare. And when this occurs, you're going to trigger Medicare IRMA. So the problem with concentrated positions is when you go to sell it, you can create a lot of taxation. And paying taxes is not necessarily a problem on its own, because it means you made money. But the concept is, can you do better? And if we're going to talk about how you can do better doing this, we need to unpack the math and look at some common strategies here. Now, if you could have done this ahead of time, and it's always hindsight is 20/20, ideally, right when you invest in things like restricted stock units, it would have been better to potentially sell portions of those and buy other stocks in the same risk class that you're comfortable with. If you're in Microsoft, as an example, what if you bought NVIDIA back in the day? Meta, Google, Apple, other companies that are in your class. you might have achieved similar returns but diversified yourself way ahead of time and not had to worry about this problem later on in retirement. So one of the things you should recognize, especially if you're watching this early, is early diversification is key. The other thing to know is at the end of your life, you get something called the step-up in basis. And in community property states, spouses get to double dip on this concept. And the concept here is that when you die, all those gains are basically wiped out. You get your heirs inherit it at the current value at the date of your death, not with all those past gains you made. That means it's effectively tax-free to your heirs. Now, when I say tax-free, it's a really loaded statement because you still have to worry about estate tax considerations. And when we're talking $4 million or more, there is an estate tax consideration. But the step-up in basis is a very powerful tool. And the problem with it is if you go for the step-up in basis, you may not diversify. But if you diversify, you may lose the step-up in basis, which is kind of one of the biggest tax cheat in all of taxes. So you kind of have to always have this in the back of your mind with all your strategies of, are you going to go for the step-up in basis or not? Now, one of the most common strategies, the easiest one to do, I would argue, is just take your time. I have something called the Rule of 250, and it's based around Washington state and also federal capital gains rates and net investment tax. And basically the concept is you always try and maximize your tax situation regardless of your income. But once you get above $250,000 or more, you tend to start accruing bonus taxes somehow. And it's not the fun type of bonus, it's extra taxation. And if you're going to accrue bonus taxes, well, what if you just avoid them by spreading out your withdrawals over, say, 4 years? And so one of the easiest ways to handle a concentrated equity position is to just spread out the gain over 4 years because you might avoid all the bonus taxes. And this can be a significant savings, roughly 10% of your taxes. Or 10% of your tax rate. So that's really good. That could be that could be $160,000 in the previous example, just as a pure example, right? So if you can just spread it out over 4 years and just do basic tax law analysis, that's a really good starting point for yourself to watch out for the Rule of 250. Now, what about tax loss harvesting? So tax loss harvesting is a strategy I see used more and more because it's becoming easier to do tax loss harvesting at a retail level. And basically, here's the way tax loss harvesting works. You invest some money in the S&P 500 4 to 5 years before you want to do the sale. And what happens is that instead of buying the S&P 500 ETF or mutual fund, you just buy the individual stocks. And you follow a program where you try and generate losses while getting the gains, so you get to have your cake and eat it too. And ideally, you generate, say, $100,000 of losses. Then when you've generated all these losses, you go and sell a portion of your concentrated equity, and you use these losses to offset that sale. And then you take that sale and you reinvest it in your direct indexing and tax loss harvesting strategy. And you keep doing this over and over and over again so that over time, you get yourself out of that concentrated equity position. You still have the tax issue, but you're now out of the concentrated equity position and you're now in a more diversified situation. And then later on, you get to flip into the step-up in basis and pass away and wipe out all those gains. So tax loss harvesting is a really cool strategy that you can look at doing. Charitable trusts. So if your money's ultimate destiny is charity, you may want to look at something called a charitable trust because it solves one of the problems you're going to naturally have when you diversify your concentrated position. So once again, let's say you have $2 million and you're diversifying and your $2 million go to 1.5 after you pay taxes and diversify. Well, that means any engine you're putting that in, income engine, growth engine, whatever, you're putting 1.5 million into it. And if your goal is to create income, a charitable remainder trust actually might be the superior solution because you can transfer $2 million to a charitable remainder trust. You could diversify it within the trust at $2 million. You can then generate income off of it, such as 5%, for the rest of your life. So you didn't give up your income, you still have it pay you. And then when you die, the remaining money goes to charity. So instead of creating income off of 1.5 million, which is the example of you selling it yourself and paying taxes, you actually are generating income off of $2 million for the rest of your life potentially, and you've given the money to charity later on when you pass away, which is ultimately going to be the money's destiny. So you've actually gotten more income from your money along the way. Also, you get another cool thing is when you donate money to charities, especially this amount of money, you typically get a fairly large tax deduction up front, usually hundreds of thousands of dollars, that you can also use to offset other taxes, do things like Roth conversions or whatever. So charitable remainder trusts are a really cool strategy for people whose ultimate destiny with the money is that it's going to go to charity. The issue here is going to be that you can't touch your $2 million anymore because it's in this charitable remainder trust. You get the income, but you can't touch the money anymore. And of course, it's going to charity when you die. Now, options are used a fair amount for this. Options have a problem that you're not necessarily diversifying, you're just protecting against your core position. So this is more for people who are going to keep that position because they implicitly trust it, like say Microsoft again. But they do need some type of structure to protect themselves if it goes down. And so you can do anything like an equity collar, or you can buy certain solutions that are designed to mimic this in lots of different ways. But basically what you're doing is you're taking your Microsoft stock and you're saying for a portion of it, I can only make between 0 and 8%. I don't know what it's going to make because on an annual basis, it's going to go up or down. But if it crashes, I'm not going to make any money, but I'm not going to lose any money. I've put a collar on here. But if it goes up, say 30%, I'm not going to make any money. I'm going to make 8% in this example, but I'm not going to make any more than that. And that's called an equity collar. And there's lots of different ways to structure this concept basically, but it's basically you're keeping the stock in place and you're constraining exactly what you're going to do with the returns basically by using puts and options or different types of options like a put. And you can also use other there's products that do this. You can look at equity linked types of options, but they're really it's a really cool way to keep your current position and give yourself some protection against it. Now, not discussed. We didn't discuss exchange funds. You're going to see this out there as an option, and this is transferring your money to an LLC, and then once it's in an LLC, you can re-diversify your money within the LLC. And then after a period of time, usually it's around 7 years, you get your money back in a diversified position, basically. I don't see exchange funds used as much because you usually need more than $5 million of assets to even do it. And I like to see someone above $10 million of assets before they consider an exchange fund because there's lots of restrictions on an exchange fund. And there can be lots of challenges around it, but they are out there. You do see it every once in a while. I've never seen it popularized because typically you need $5 to $10 million of assets. So it's a very small percentage of people who can play the LLC game. That's limited liability corporation. You can also do loans on your positions. If you have, say, $5 million of Microsoft stock, it's a high number. You could take, say, around $1 million loan off of it. Live off of that based upon the loan, and when you take loans out, you typically don't have to pay taxes. And then you can pay off the loan at some point with your Microsoft stock that, in theory, outgrew even the interest rate of the loan. I don't see this used as much because it has a lot of extra risk. People don't necessarily have enough money to always do this, so you have to be fairly wealthy to do the leverage game. So people do it in small ways every once in a while. But I don't see it used in a comprehensive way unless you're fairly wealthy. Some final thoughts on here, some basic concepts you should consider. This decision has a lot of emotional baggage. If you've worked for a company for a long time and you had something like Microsoft that went up for 20 years, you may not remember in the 90s or in the dot-com boom where Microsoft kind of had a lost decade. You always have this emotional fear of I sold too early and then it popped again and made 30%. You can have the emotional fear can go down at any time. There's a lot of emotional baggage around this decision. I've dealt with it a lot, and I've seen it happen a lot. And the biggest one, of course, is what happens if it goes up. Another one is you have to always take the risk. If you're really worried about this an Enron situation, meaning the stock is utterly going to fail, you need to diversify faster, which means you have to pay the taxes faster, and you can't always do all these strategies. Versus if you can spread out over time, 4 years, 10 years, things like that, you're not assuming an Enron situation. You're assuming I need diversification because it could go down someday. Another thing is, are you willing to do the work to save $10,000? Saving $10,000 in your taxes, I think, is a pretty good deal. And if you can repeat this over and over again, that's pretty cool. But some people look at that and go, I don't want to do the work to do that. And are you willing to hire someone at that point? Because if you're not willing to hire someone, and that's fair, a lot of people don't want to hire someone because they don't see the value in it, but they're also not able to do this work or want to do this work, then this might be a situation where you just know about all this, but you're really looking at the step-up in basis and the basic sale concept. Beyond that, I'm always here to help. I've really appreciated the chance to give you this video today. And if you are ever looking for a financial planner to work with you in a one-on-one fashion, I work with clients in my office here in Overlake, or next to Overlake here in Bellevue, Washington. I work with clients virtually, and I'm always happy to look at your situation, answer questions, and just see if I can get you further down your path, whatever you'd like. So I hope this video is good. I tried to pair this with a tax loss harvesting video. So if you look at my channel, you'll also see the tax loss harvesting video with direct indexing. And I would say that would be a good logical next video to watch. Thank you.